In my late teens and in my early to mid 20s, I struggled heavily with an unhealthy relationship with food, specifically the binge-restrict eating cycle, lots of fad dieting, body image issues, a thing called orthorexia, which is a obsession with eating clean, healthy food. And it took over everything. It took over my brain, it took over my life, it took over my habits. I was under the shackles of this cycle and this relationship with food, and I wish when I was younger there were more people on the internet who made videos like this talking about their experience and what has helped them, because I really just thought that in order for me to ever heal my relationship with food, it was going to be this program that I buy, or I would have to go to therapy for so many years, or it was going to be a book that I didn't find yet that was going to fix my issue. And it actually was none of that, but I am going to tell you all the things that I have discovered and all the things that I personally did on my journey to heal my relationship with food. And if you are currently struggling, then I just hope that you get something out of this video, and also to understand that you are not alone. I feel like there's so many people, even behind closed doors, who struggle with being on the spectrum of an unhealthy relationship with food. And if you are new here, my name is Alicia Gogan. I make health and wellness videos. I was doing vlogs, we're doing sit down videos right now. They might come back, but for now we are just going to be talking about the topics that have helped me grow and evolve, in hopes to help you guys as well. And if you're not new, then hello, how are we doing? Might as well show you Theo because he is up. Italian Greyhound for anyone who is new. 6 months, almost 7 months. Of course he is up and at it while I'm filming, so hopefully he'll just chill out. And my drink of choice today is water. This is what happens when you have a puppy. Now before we get into it, of course, I'm just gonna make this disclaimer. This is just my journey. This is what has worked for me. This is what I have learned. I'm not a therapist or a doctor, but I do think my story can help a lot of people, because I think that stories and things that are real and people who have gone through it can really help change someone else's life, especially if they don't have any access to, I don't know, like information when it comes to these things, or like therapists and things like that. But with that said, I want to read this little quote. I'll probably have like a bunch of them. And it says, 3 signs that you are in an unhealthy relationship with food. 1, you can't stop thinking about food or your next meal. Obsessive thoughts have taken over your life and you see each food as good or bad. And that was definitely me. For so many years, it was always on my mind. Food was always a thing. And it was also always this good or bad thing. Number 2, you eat quote unquote healthy on the weekdays, then binge on the weekends. You keep thinking next week will be different, but it never is. When I would eat something that was quote unquote bad, I would think that I was ruining my progress. I would think that I was ruining my body because it wasn't quote unquote healthy. And I think this is where the binge can happen, where you are wanting to maybe follow a diet, or you fall on the scale of being orthorexic, where you're really obsessed with eating clean because maybe you're really educated and you're into the holistic foods and health and wellness and things like that. But let's say you eat something that's off of your quote unquote diet, which we will talk about why we do those things as well. You feel like you've messed up everything, and then you eat more and you go into this binge, and it can last a whole night. It could last into the next day. You're like, you know what, I'm just gonna eat whatever I want because I've ruined it, and I'll just start on Monday. Like, that's how I used to always feel, is just like, I'm just gonna have to start on Monday because I ruined everything. And it was a cycle that I didn't break for a very long time, but now it is broken. Number 3 is you bargain with your meals, exercise, and mental wellness because you don't trust yourself around food, and you can't tell if you're hungry or full. I think this goes back to just always having food and fitness, and whether it is good or bad, always just taking up so much space in your mind. Now, in order to change something in your life, or change the way that you show up in your life, it is really important that you understand why you are doing the things that you are doing in the first place. And I think that we all know what we are doing, which is, let's say, the binge eating, the overeating, or you feel a certain way, but you don't know why. And I think that that is the first piece with really breaking down and getting out of this binge and restrict cycle. So I'm gonna quickly read emotional causes of binge eating, but then I'm also going to break down like the main 3 areas that I had to dive deep in and share my own experience. And I think that a lot of you guys will resonate with this. And it will be the emotional side of things, it will be the mental side of things, and it will also be the physical side of things. And guys, I remember sitting in my bed after a long day, whether it was work or I went to the gym or this, that, and it was like maybe a Friday night and I wasn't doing anything, and the thoughts that just like took over my head, and I just like blacked out, and I would go to a store and I would get all these things that were not in my rule book in my head, and I would sit in my bed and I would just eat and eat and eat until I was so full. And I got to a point where there'd be times where I would try and bring that food back up because I didn't want it in my body, which of course just made me feel worse about myself. And in those times, I really never knew why I was doing it. I just knew that I was having these obsessive thoughts, and then I would go and do the action, and then I would feel like shame and guilt, and then I would kind of start on a Monday. So this one says, emotional causes of binge eating: to access small moments of thrill, relief, or escape, to mute troubling thoughts or emotions that don't seem to resolve any other way, to calm down your nervous system when it's overwhelmed, to compensate for the letdown that follows periods of authentic joy and connection, to avoid the next transition, whether that's to bed, to work, tasks that require a shift in energy, which I remember discovering this and I was like, whoa, I used to always feel the urge to eat like candy and even like excess amount of food anytime that I was like coming home from work, or like before I was gonna go to work, the transition to things, or even after I would socialize with people. Another one is to distract from reality, to avoid the vulnerability and uncertainty of life with binging as a coping strategy, to play out insecure attachment patterns, to experience pleasure when pleasure is otherwise scarce. And honestly, that explains a lot of the reasons why I was doing a lot of binging. And again, you will hear that in my story. So let's first talk about the mental health and mindset component of my personal story. And there was a few things going on in my mind which drove me to even go in the direction of wanting to diet and change the way that I was eating. And maybe I'll just quickly give you kind of a quick backstory before I started dieting or wanting to change my body or anything like that. I ate a pretty like standard, I guess, American diet. I live in Canada, but it's the same thing. But I always would eat a lot of candy, and I think that once I moved into high school, I did find myself eating a lot of processed foods and pizza and candy, and I would always be consumed with it and always want to eat it, and it just kind of like grew from there. So once I wanted to start changing my body and the way that I looked when I got into high school, I realized, oh, I'm probably like not eating the best for myself because I wasn't. And I also was finding those binge eating tendencies. But as I was in high school and body image issues became a thing, I was like, okay, well, I want to look like a certain body type and I don't have that. So how do I do that? And I spent a lot of time on Tumblr, and I wrote a lot of this in my book, The Ultimate Glow Up Guide, which I can link down below if you'd like. Really, I share my entire story in that book, especially when it comes to my unhealthy relationship with food. And I spent a lot of time on Tumblr, which is kind of like the old day Pinterest in a way. And my Tumblr was just filled with girls with like bikini bodies and like really perfect curated photos and things like that. So it definitely did not help with my body image issues at all. I also grew up in a city where no one really looked like me. I was like one of the, I don't know, 5 mixed kids in my town, really. And in my high school, there was like literally 2 other kids. So I just naturally felt a lot different. Didn't feel like I was pretty, didn't feel like I was like skinny, didn't have the clothes that a lot of the girls that I was hanging out with would wear. And I think also just naturally being a girl, like you just want to be better and you want to look pretty and you want to have all the cool clothes. Even if you're not a girl, if you're a guy watching this, it's kind of the same thing. Like you want to be a part of the crew or the clan. You want to feel important. So I just felt very inadequate in that way. So in my mind, I kind of had a warped view of how I needed to look or be. And of course, the way that I tried to do that was changing my body, which led me into I need to work out, I need to change the way that I'm eating, and that kind of got me into those food rules and those insane fad diets. Like, I definitely tried every single diet under the sun. I tried, the first diet I ever tried was called Atkins diet, and this was in grade 12, and I'm almost 30 now. So that was crazy, and obviously that didn't really work. I then went on to try all different types of things, like counting my calories, counting my macros, trying keto, trying paleo, anti-inflammatory diets when I got into like the holistic health and wellness realm. I tried doing vegan, like everything. It was just a lot. Now I call that the mental and the like mindset side of things, but then I had another layer that I was actually really struggling with, which was my emotional health. I had a really big reliance on eating foods to calm me down and to soothe me and to help me feel more safe. And again, I didn't know any of these things, but even when I was really, really young, I remember always thinking about candy. I just wanted candy. And this is beyond just a kid who like likes candy and enjoys candy. Like, I was consumed by it. Any place that I would go, anytime someone would babysit me, anytime I would go to my friend's house, like I was always just thinking about that. And I was really regulating my nervous system because I came from a childhood which there was a lot of instability and there was a lot of fear, especially around my father. So I actually relied on that a lot without even knowing that, even in my high school years. There's so many things in life that will create a response, an emotional response, and if you don't have the tools to regulate yourself, you will go to things like food, and that's what I was doing. And then the last part was just my physical reliance on eating sugar, and even outside of sugar, just like processed and heavy foods, things that are just, I don't want to say good or bad because like we'll get into that, but things that don't fuel you and give you a lot of energy and vitality and sustained energy. And so I was constantly going into this cycle of my mindset was thinking that I needed to look like this, and then also the emotional reliance, and then the fact that I was eating all these things, and I was like, well, I actually physically want more, I'm craving more, and I was going into this cycle. So I want to talk about some of the realizations that I had to come to and some of the things that I did to allow me to no longer have that mental health mindset be like that, the emotional side and also the physical side. So let's go back to the first thing. When I was in high school and I was growing up and I was wanting to change my body, I was searching for external love and validation. And I want to say this first and foremost, it is okay that you want that. We are humans, which means we are built and we are wired for connection. So we are going to try and find that connection any which way that we can. And unfortunately, sometimes we learn to do that in ways that are not as helpful. And in this society, or at least in my generation, it was all about how pretty and hot and skinny and good can I look, specifically for men. And I'm not saying that people who have unhealthy relationships with food, that's what you care about. It's like you care about male validation. But in my circumstance, that really is what that was, because I knew if I looked good, then I'll probably get attention from guys and girls too, in a way. And it was definitely more that male validation. And I wasn't even a girl who talked to a lot of guys. I didn't have a boyfriend. I didn't hook up with a lot of people. I didn't really enjoy even like indulging too much in hookup culture. Like when I got into the times where I could go to the bars and go out with my friends and things like that, like I had like guys that I would see here and there, but I realized like that was just not it for me. So it wasn't even like I was super boy crazy, but at the end of the day, it was really like coming down to this search for external love and validation. And I was just so obsessed with this idea that my body needed to look a certain way for me to be happy, to be liked, to fit into these outfits that I thought that was just gonna make me look amazing. And again, it's not to say that we shouldn't want to look amazing in clothes, or that that's not what that will do, of course. Because I can say right now, I love when I look great in clothes. I love when my body looks fit and great and healthy. But I really had to get real with myself and see how I was chasing a lot of external validation. Now, something that really helped me move away from this obsession of I need to look a certain way is understanding that my body should really be the least interesting thing about me. And why would I even want to build friendships or romantic relationships off of the idea that like they are with me or they're friends with me because I have this really nice body? Because what type of relationship really is that then? That is not healthy, which is what I obviously learned. I learned even when I was starting to change my body and I did look pretty good, even though internally I still looked at myself like I was not good and didn't look good at all. I did have attention from guys when I had a little bit of a glow up, and I realized it was fleeting because these guys really only cared about like my appearance. And then of course, when you are attracting people who only care about that, they just basically want to hook up with you or like waste your time in a way, and they don't really care about you as a person. And that does not sustain any form of real connection and relationship, which is what I was actually trying to get anyways in the first place. When I was younger, whether I admitted it or not, I wanted a boyfriend, or I wanted like relationships. I wanted friendship even. I wanted these relationships and I wanted them to last, but I was searching for those relationships in the wrong places, because the relationships that do last, they are not going to require you to look as hot as you've ever been all the time, and that's all that matters. And I'm not saying that in this case men don't have certain preferences, or again that you can't want to look good because I like looking good, but that should not be the focus of your relationships. I also had to change my relationship that I had to social media because I was realizing that that was really feeding my mind in a negative way. So I stopped consuming so much content where it was like fitness influencers, or even if when I moved on to Pinterest, like looking at like bodies and things like that in that way, like goals. And I'm a dreamer. I love mood boards. I love all things aesthetic, but I had to take a step back from that because the amount of photos and content that I was consuming, of a lot of the times even edited photos of women's bodies and things like that, just wasn't serving me, and it was taking away from the progress that I was even making in the gym. So that really helped me. And I also did need to take a look at the places that I was moving around. And when I was in my early 20s and I was going to college and things like that, it was like drinking culture, going out, things like that, which also require you in a way, it doesn't have to, it doesn't for me now, but it kind of like required you to care about your looks a lot. And I felt that that was not helping any of my insecurities. And where I was going out, it was like the people only cared about that. So I kind of had to remove myself from those places. And I started to focus on things that did matter, like where am I going in my career, and how am I as a human being in terms of how do I treat people, and the quality of friendships that I have and the relationships that I have. Do I have hobbies? What are my interests outside of just looking hot for an Instagram photo and focusing on overly editing photos, which then if you go and meet someone in real life, they're gonna be like, huh? Like, I just realized that that's just not gonna lead me anywhere. I also started to understand that just because I see someone who I believe is beautiful doesn't mean it has anything to do with me. Like, it doesn't need to take away from anything, or that I lose because I look at them like they're beautiful and amazing. And if they get attention, that doesn't mean that I'm not gonna have attention, or that I won't find love, or that I'm not good enough. There are 8 or 9 billion people in this world now, I don't even know. There is going to be somebody who loves you for you. And I know that's completely like not believable sometimes when you're in the depths of like struggling with body image. I get it because it's everywhere, but I did need to start reminding myself of that, because it was crazy to think that just because somebody else that I saw that was looking good meant that I wasn't going to find somebody who I felt I was attracted to and liked me for me. Now, I want to say this, it's gonna take some time for you to deconstruct and see the ways that you are under those shackles of trying to find that external love and validation from people, places, and things that might not serve you. So it's important to give yourself time with that, because what's actually formed in your head now from maybe that young part of you is typically a controller part of you or a perfectionist part of you. And this is coming from a therapy model called internal family systems, aka parts work. And you can get the book No Bad Parts by Richard Schwartz. It will change your life and you will understand yourself so much more. But essentially, you have now created this part of you in your head, okay, that you operate from a lot, where it says like, no, you can't eat this food, or yes, this food is good, or you don't look good in this, and you need to be better, and you need to be perfect. And that takes time for you to not be controlled by this part and for you to operate out of different parts of you. The one that knows that I don't need to be perfect to be loved. I don't need to be overeating all of these foods, and that knows what's better for you when it comes to eating in terms of fueling your body versus doing self-sabotaging behaviors like binge eating food that you probably would never eat if you were just on a like normal, like non-restrictive diet in a way. And so addressing this part of you is going to be another piece that will be honestly kind of maybe even a lifelong process, because we have a controller slash a perfectionist part of us that will play a role in a lot of things, whether it's work, relationships, but also the way we view ourselves and even how we eat. And I think that that was really, really huge when it came to binge eating. And so I'm gonna say this first and foremost: the binging stops when the restriction stops. And it's really, really hard for your controller part to come to terms with that. And it might take a while, and it might want to find ways to prove yourself wrong about that. But the truth is a lot of the reasons why you are overindulging and binging is because of the rules that you're placing on yourself, the restriction, the this is good and this is bad and you cannot. And that will always, always, always push you into wanting to do the opposite. As soon as you tell yourself you cannot have that cake, what do? You start thinking about that cake 10 times more. But the same thing can go with, okay, you need to go to the gym and work really, really hard because your body is not good enough and you're not good enough and you need to just change. That is going to feel like an uphill battle to the point where you're gonna dread it. You don't even want to do it. Maybe you have like a high energy and you're like obsessed with like going to the gym for like a week or two, and then you get to a point where you're like, oh my God, this is dreadful, because in the back of your mind, you're telling yourself you're not good enough, you need to do more, you need to do better, you need to restrict. And that, my friends, will always keep you in the cycle. Now, in order for you to have a different relationship with yourself, aka like not to be controlled so much by this part, is you need to first understand, like I said with the external validation, that this part of you is actually just trying to keep you safe. And when I learned this, I was like, why would me overeating and binge eating and or just being really strict on myself or being like self-hating, any of that, because it's all the same thing, why would that be helpful for me? But you have to see the correlation. You have this protector part, the one that says you need to restrict, because it's trying to help you get to the goal of seeking validation and love, right? Because that is what you are wired for. And what you have learned is, in order to get love and validation, I need to look like this. I need to have a body like this. I will be better and I will enjoy life, whatever it is, whatever your root issue is. But that is what that part of you is trying to help you get. And that's why I think it's really important that you really go deeper in your relationship with like body image and where you might be seeking love and validation and what you believe that like you need to be in order to have that. All of that alongside you actually trying to break this binge eating cycle. Because if you in your head are always thinking that your body needs to look good or be better or whatever it is, or even like you have to be so incredibly healthy that like you just can never eat like a piece of sugar, things like that, you will always then fall back into that restrictive eating cycle. Now, there's like another part to this, and this is because I had orthorexia, which is again this obsession with eating like pure, clean, healthy food. And there's a difference between just like knowing what's probably better for you when it comes to like your energy and your body, and that's kind of like where I'm at now, and like not being okay if you eat a piece of pizza. Like, you know, definitely a difference. And this is really about learning that you trying to be perfect with anything is always going to lead you to the same outcome, which is maybe in this instance restrictive eating, but also like unhappiness, and you're always going to crash out and burn, because nothing in life is perfect. And guess what? This is like the most freeing thing I could tell you. You don't need to be perfect. Not everything needs to be perfect. I promise you, your diet does not need to be perfect. If the ones who like are obsessed with like whole foods and eating healthy, listen, I know, I get that. I like good quality foods. I like eating from home. I like when I go out, like eating like good meals, things like that. You are not going to drop dead because you eat something that is not super clean. And what you also need to understand is, by you stressing about clean eating and then going into this binge restrict cycle and then binging anyways and eating food that you probably would never even eat, is going to do worse for you than it would for you to just eat that pizza with your friends and you're having a really good time. Your emotional state and your nervous system play a huge role in your health. So if you are constantly stressed, if you are constantly hating on yourself, you could eat the cleanest diet in the whole world and you will still end up sick. Trust me, I've been there. I promise you, I have absolutely been there. And one last side note, I have IBD in the form of ulcerative colitis. So anyone who has like any sort of autoimmune disease or any sort of health issue, which is typically what drives you into like the whole foods, the clean eating, things like that. I understand that struggle of really believing, well, I have this health issue, so I need to eat clean and this, that, but I promise you, you are not going to be the healthiest version of you when you are constantly being obsessed with, is this good or bad? Like literally on a cellular level, it's not gonna do you justice, and I'm pretty sure you've probably already learned that. So something I had to do on my journey was to really redefine what it means to be healthy. And I know this can be difficult, and realistically it is ever changing, as it should be actually, because that's what it means to be a healthy individual, is to understand that things change and you evolve and there's rhythms to life and everything. But I had to be real with myself. Just because I'm counting calories or staying on a super strict diet doesn't mean that my mental health is good, doesn't mean that my nervous system is regulated. I also saw that I was very stressed and overwhelmed, even though I was eating quote unquote the cleanest diet I could. Also, just because I have a small body doesn't necessarily mean I'm the healthiest. And this is no shade to small bodies, but you know, I've had times where I was really small because I was struggling with a flare-up with my IBD. I was tiny, but I had zero muscle. I was really undernourished, and that's not, in my personal opinion, that's not health. But also, not going out and living my life, not having a social life, being consumed with food, that's not healthy as well. And I know it's hard to picture a life where you're living a balanced life, where you can go out with your friends and eat pizza and not be consumed with it, or go out with your boyfriend and have ice cream and not think about it ever again. But I promise you, there is a life where it's like that and you can get there. And I say that because I genuinely thought that I was never going to be able to not think about food the way that I used to, and I don't anymore. Now I'm going to quickly talk about a few things that I learned on my journey that helped me with redefining health. And one thing actually was something that I kept from my quote unquote unhealthy relationship with food, was learning about whole foods and like cooking more at home, and you know, eating foods that are kind of more nourishing to the body, because there's definitely foods that are just nourishing to the body. You having, I know some people don't eat meat and that's totally fine if you don't, but like for this instance, you having a steak with some sweet potato and some avocado and maybe some sauteed vegetables, things like that for dinner, versus you having 3 donuts for dinner. That is going to do something to your blood sugar, that is going to do something to your mindset, that's going to just make you actually feel like not good, and it's not also going to fill you up as well. Like there are definitely things that are better for our bodies, so learning more about whole foods and eating in that way is very helpful. Another thing is learning about my cycle that really helped and changed the game for me, was learning that I move through a hormonal clock every single month if I'm not on birth control. And I have a cycle syncing video that will be coming out, so I can talk more about that. But Essentially, I can eat and move and be productive based off of the cycle that I'm in, my hormonal cycle, and support myself through different whole foods and proteins, healthy fats, things like that. And those are all going to be things that really help nourish my body. And these are all things that are not restrictive. I don't ever feel restricted because I don't have any restrictions. But another thing is to understand that consistency is more important than intensity. And when you are somebody who struggles with an unhealthy relationship with food, you typically do things all or nothing. You go to the gym, you eat super clean for like a week or 2 or even 3 weeks, and then you crash out and burn. But if you look at how many times you do that over a span of a year, you just come to the end of the year feeling really unhealthy, unhappy, and nothing has been consistent. And your body is not able to keep up and even give you any progress when it comes to if you do want to change your body in any sort of way, or for you to actually feel energized or work on proper sleep and movement and taking in all those nutrients that you're trying to feed it. So I have learned to really cut back on the intensity of things and focus on consistency. So it can look like anything, of course, but you know, I would rather go at least 2 times consistently to the gym on a weekly basis than for me to tell myself I need to go 5 days a week, Monday to Friday, super hard 6 a.m. workouts. That's dreadful for me personally, and especially because I cycle sync. There's many days of the week where maybe I'm not really up for that. I don't have that much energy, or I need to change it up. And so being realistic and doing things that are not so hard on my nervous system and my mental health, like setting a goal of, okay, twice a week to the gym, or I'm going to focus on meal prepping just a few meals throughout the week, and I'm not going to obsess over all the other ones. Like doing things like that over time, I see results in the gym. I stay consistent on things. I stay in cycle, and that really helps with your actual physical addiction to things like the sugar cravings and your mental process that you will go into when you are doing things all or nothing. Now, if you're overwhelmed with wellness trends and what to do when it comes to eating well, moving your body, and changing your routines in your lifestyle, I will link a video that I made when it comes to like feeling like you're burnt out by wellness trends and things like that, and going back to the basics of what I personally believe is kind of like the pinnacle of health, like regulating your nervous system and getting outside and moving your body and having healthy relationships and all the simple things. I feel like we really make health and wellness much more difficult than it needs to be. And I've been the healthiest I've ever been, and I've healed from a lot of these things based off of just going back to the basics and not being so consumed with doing 100 like fad diets or being super perfect with everything. Now let's go into the emotional dysregulation that I was experiencing, which led me a lot of the times to eat food and go to things that were highly palatable, like processed and sugary foods. So kind of connecting it back to what I was talking about with the need for external love and validation and feeling like a failure if I would crash and burn out by the end of the week and then I would start on Monday. That creates an emotional feeling of I feel like a failure, I feel like I'm not good enough, I feel guilty, and that will also push you to food as well, because we are really trying to suppress and push down and not be with those emotions that will come up. And the thing is we are human, whether it's because of anything we did with the unhealthy relationship with food, but even just life can be stressful, relationships, all of these things can come up and they elicit a emotional response. If we don't work with those emotions and through those emotions and be with ourselves, we will go to things like food. Some people go to things like drugs, or back to the toxic ex, or overspending, or bed rotting, going on social media, like all of those things to try and mask the uncomfortableness that we will feel when we have these emotions. So through my journey, I really tried to figure out what were my triggers? What did I feel before I did the thing? Now, in my book, I actually have a lot of journal prompts where you can actually write in my book. And in a section where I talk about self-sabotage, I really talk about how when you're doing a behavior you don't want to be doing, you really need to get curious about what am I feeling right now that makes me want to run away and eat, let's say, for instance. So there's a lot of triggers. I've talked about many of them. When I would be on social media, I would be triggered. When I would go out, I would be triggered around the wrong people. When I would tell myself I would start a new diet and then instantly like not be able to stay on that diet, I would feel triggered. There's also a lot of real things were out of my control. I grew up with a father who was very, very strict and really did not teach me how to regulate emotions, but also taught me to suppress emotions. And our emotions don't go away. We just learn how to suppress them. We get really good at that. But I felt scared a lot. And so I went to candy to help me feel better in situations where I felt scared. Also around this time is when my mother's addiction was really not good. And so I was stressed. We were financially stressed. Of course, I was having to deal with the fact that my parent was doing what she was doing. And so I would go to food and I would go to these things to help try and regulate my emotions. And I didn't even really realize that was happening, but I did know I was in a stressful situation. And it was always those stressful situations that would lead me to be like, okay, you know what, tonight I want to like ruin all my progress, or I want to like order a bunch of food, or I just don't want to go out and see anyone that would be healthy for me, or talk to anyone because I just want to eat, and like that's going to be the thing, and then I'm going to go into that cycle. It was always something before the thing. And so on my journey, I really realized that I had a lot of emotional trauma that I needed to work through. And I didn't do this with a therapist, first and foremost. I want to say that because I think that people might feel stuck with this one because it's like, well, what do I do if I can't go see a therapist? I worked through a lot of my emotional stuff before I even had money to go to therapy. I go to therapy now, but this was all of this stuff I didn't have money to go to therapy with. I just figured it out on my own. I listened to podcasts. I read up on these things. I tried and failed and tried again, and things worked and things like that. But I realized I was suppressing a lot of my emotions. So I did a lot of journal practices, and I talk about this in my book as well. And I still do this now to this day, where I basically just emotionally released. When I would feel hard emotions or I would feel like I want to go to the thing, I tried my best before I even allowed myself to go to the thing. Like there was no rules on like, oh, you can't binge eat, because as soon as you tell yourself to not do that, then you probably still will do that. So it's about taking away those rules, but it's first being like, okay, can I sit with myself at all at any point through this entire journey, like even just like one time, and really check in with how I'm feeling and release what I'm feeling. And there's a lot of things that were suppressed. I had a lot of anger and resentment and sadness towards my dad for not being the father that he really should have been, and all the fear and the anxiety that I had, and I released that and I let that out, and I started to let myself cry for once. Like I was somebody who like never would cry. I was very stoic, and I started to let myself cry. And then there'd be a lot of things I would write when it came to my mom and the way that I felt about her, and the resentment that I was holding, and the sadness that I was feeling for losing that part of her. And I had to let that out. And the more times I had practices where I would let my emotions out, the less I wanted to binge, because I had the I don't need to be perfect situation happening over here, and really going deeper into the body image issues and working on that. But also, once I would release my emotions, I didn't have this huge urge to go to food, but also I started to remind myself these tactics don't work anymore. I know the name of the game. When you go through 1,000,001 binge eating cycles, you realize that it always ends up you doing the same thing over and over and feeling the same way. And I think I just had to be real with myself about this. You know, this is short-term gratification, me going to eat a bunch of donuts right now. This is not gonna do what I think it's going to do. And what am I going to feel afterwards? I'm gonna feel like shit about myself. I really started to remind myself of the consequences of my actions. Not in a bad way, but just to remind myself, well, how do you feel, Alicia, when you eat those donuts in 3 seconds and then now you're left with feeling like guilt and shame? So is there a different action we can take, or at least try to, before I go and do the thing? Another thing that is so huge that people do not understand when it comes to being with yourself emotionally and regulating your nervous system essentially is it's not just going to be up to you. It's gonna be, how do I move away from the things that are causing these triggers? How do I distance myself from toxic people, places, and things? How do I move myself out of environments or take breaks from things that I know are not going to be good for me? And this is why it takes time, and this is why you need to have grace and compassion for yourself, because there's gonna be times where you get triggered and you're gonna do the thing. But what I have learned is the quicker I get over the fact that I binged that day or I wanted to go to food, the quicker I got out of the cycle and I picked myself back up and I learned the lesson. And that is how I got out of these cycles. It wasn't one day I learned all this information and then the next time I got triggered, I was able to write out my emotions, and then pretty and perfect, I felt good and I didn't eat and like, you know, have these food rules, or I never had body image issues again. And no, it didn't happen like that. It was over time, slowly, I was getting out of the binge eating cycle. Maybe I would eat like a little bit, not as much as I usually did, because I understood the consequences of my actions. I would try to let my emotions out when I did. I worked myself away from the toxic environments, which took some time. I filled my life up with relationships that were a little bit better for myself. I started talking to people more. I started getting outside and being more consistent with my movement and my eating that was a little bit better than it was before. And over time, there was no sense and no urgency to go to food. And when I am in an emotional state now, when I am bored, when I don't feel good about myself, I don't go there. My mind doesn't go there because I have slowly gotten myself out. And I'm just saying this to remind you that it is possible to get yourself out of these things. Now, I want to go to the physical addiction part, because I think that we do need to understand that when we are in these cycles, like any other addiction really, your body is like actually primed to want to crave more of these foods that you typically eat, but also just the mere habits, the habitual on Friday, I already know what's coming, I'm gonna binge. And then it's fine because I do it all the time and I negotiate with myself all the time. I'm gonna tell myself it's fine to do it on Monday. Like, your mind is addicted to thinking that way. Your mind is addicted to thinking there's only one way to be healthy. Your mind is addicted to, I have to do five workouts this week. I need to keep telling myself that, and then you never do it. Like, you're just like really primed and addicted to thinking that way and to eating and moving that way. So understanding that there's gonna be an uncomfortable detox period, I guess, when you're going through things like moving away from like the amount of times that you binge, or, you know, let's say you binge on a Friday and you're doing this work and you're emotionally releasing and maybe you like know all your triggers and things like that, but let's say you kind of did that and you're trying to learn to love yourself through it and unconditionally, it's okay, it's not a big deal. Your mind might be like, okay, it's fine, maybe I did a little bit of that work, but I'm gonna still start on Monday. I would urge you to push yourself. You're gonna have to push yourself a little bit out of that comfort zone and be like, you know what? I did the thing, but I'm gonna try and pick myself up a little bit quicker. So maybe tomorrow is gonna be the time where it's the start on Monday instead of the actual Monday. Like, doing things like that is the things that will get you out. Same thing could go with like if you are like not feeling the gym. Sometimes what I tell myself is, you know what, Alicia, just all you gotta do is just get up and go into the gym. And if you hate it, and if you just are not into it, and you just like don't have the energy, you don't even have to do the workout that you told yourself to do. You can just walk on the treadmill if you want, you can listen to music, or you don't even have to, you can go back upstairs. But let's just try. You have to inch yourself and push yourself a little bit out of your comfort zone. Now, I found something else on Pinterest that I really liked, and it says when cravings are high. And by the way, I did do a Q&A on my Instagram, so I'm gonna answer some of those questions, but I think that this can kind of tie into some of those questions that were asked. So it says, when cravings are high, it doesn't mean that sugar is evil. Sugar is the reason why you crave it. Cut out all sugar, burn the sugar, never eat sugar, cauliflower rice can replace sugar, drink celery juice, all of those things. It may mean calories may be set too low, not getting enough nutrients in your diet, restriction is high, aka you want what you quote unquote can't have, stress is high, you're not getting enough quality sleep, and there's could be like a million other reasons. And the reason why I'm saying that is kind of bringing it back to when you have some of those thoughts about wanting to eat certain things, like you could just be in that state of, you know, the food rules, but also genuinely like maybe you're just not nourished properly. And I mean, think about it, when you're constantly in these cycles, are you ever? I definitely wasn't. I feel so much different than I do now. And my habits and the cravings or the pulls of certain things aren't the same as what they were. So I want to talk about some hard but freeing truths before we get into the Q&A. And one of them is that it will take time, but that's okay because you have time, okay? I know we feel like sometimes we're in this rush, like I need to be healed and I need to be better, but give yourself time. The best things in life take time. Everything takes time, and that is okay. And you're not ruining anything by making progress, even if it's small. You will also probably binge again, and that's okay. The same way it's okay when you mess up sometimes again, even if you told yourself not to do the thing, whatever that thing is. It's about giving yourself grace and compassion and learning the lesson and understanding why you do the things that you do and trying your best to course correct from a place of self-love and not from a place of self-hate. When you do get out of this cycle, your diet is not going to be the picture perfect diet that you probably think that it's going to be. For me, I eat very balanced. For the majority of the time, I am eating from home because I work from home and I like having my meals like quick and to make them. But also I'll go out and I'll go to restaurants, I'll go eat with my friends. And listen, I might have to make a separate video because this video is going to be so long of, I don't know, something to do like with the, I don't even want to call it a diet, but sure, I guess I can call it a diet because a diet is also like just what you eat, but I'm not on any sort of diet. I don't count calories, I don't do anything, but I do have a lot of knowledge on what I know is the best for my body, which will also look different for everyone. But I've kind of already mentioned, I cycle sync, so I make sure that I'm supporting my body through different proteins, fibers, carbs, fats, things like that. I'm eating a lot of food from home. I'm cooking my food from home a lot of the times, but I'm not like having any rules about that. It just like ends up being what keeps me productive throughout the week. I will go out and typically I will find stuff that is more high in protein and fiber, not because I have to or that I should, or that it's bad if I don't. It's because it makes me feel typically the best. But if I am out and I feel like I want to have a truffle pizza with my boyfriend, I am going to have that. But sometimes I'm like, you know what? I really want a burger and I want like beef. And I eat beef and I eat burgers and I love them. Or I don't know, maybe I'll get a pasta and I'm like, you know what, I kind of want some protein here because it does keep me fuller for longer. And I don't stress about it. I don't overthink it. If we get ice cream after, we get ice cream after. But the truth is, once you release yourself and you free yourself from these restrictions, you will eventually get to a point where you also use your free will and decide to eat food that fuels you. And I think that a lot of us can be scared. I know I was scared of like, oh, okay, I'm not gonna diet, so I'm just gonna eat all the food and binge all the time. And that can be a reality. Like, you might gain weight and you have to be okay with that coming to the body image issues, or you might go through a period of time where you are definitely like, in your head, I'm probably not eating the best, but maybe that's just what needs to happen. It kind of happened for me, but you end up getting to a point where it's like, actually, I do want to eat whole foods and balanced meals and things that fuel me, because I do know that there are foods that are fueling and nutritious and some that are not, and that's okay. I feel like some movements try and make people who have unhealthy relationships with food be super okay with everything all the time and like have absolutely no not knowledge, I don't know what the word is, but like, you're allowed to like still look at food like this is more nourishing and this is not. Like, it's okay. Like, it's not going to kill you if you do that. And what I do is I still know that there are foods that nourish me more and foods that don't. And there's just gonna be times in my life where I choose to eat the foods that don't because it fulfills me in other ways, because I enjoy the pleasure of eating good food, and I should, and I'm allowed to. It's fun. I'm out with my friends, or even if I'm at home and you know what, like, I wanna watch Love Island and I want a burger, or I want nachos, I'm gonna make nachos, or I'm gonna get it, or I want some ice cream. Like, it's okay, because I am happy and I'm enjoying my life and I do not need to be perfect. And you can absolutely get to a point where, let's say you want to make homemade cookies, that you actually only eat 2 of those cookies instead of the whole tray. I do that all the time. I have cookie dough sitting in my fridge because I made my boyfriend these cookies, and old me would have made them all and ate them all, and I don't even like really think about them. I just thought about them now because I went into the fridge to take a break. But I can have those things. But then also there's times where, you know what, if I did have a bunch of Oreos in my place and all of the candy in the whole world and like so many pops and so much ice cream, like yeah, I'd be more prone to eating those things, and that's okay as well. Like there can be a balance of being like, yeah, I actually don't need to have this around me, and like if I have a bunch of donuts in my house and I probably will eat them, like that's like also just being normal as well, and having some temptations. And again, maybe I can do like a separate video on some of the ways that I eat as well, because I still have cravings. I still like a little sweet treat, but I make sure that I'm eating my sweet treats in a way that still fuels me, and not from this place of like it needs to be a rule and you have to eat this and convince yourself that this is like just as good as a chocolate bar. Like genuinely, I want this sweet treat that I make at home more than a chocolate bar because this like just literally tastes better. Like I'm talking about like maybe like a yogurt bowl or something, but I digress. So those are just some of the hard truths, but they're freeing because you can actually get on the other side of these things. All right, so let's go into the Q&A. There's a bunch of them and I don't know if I'll be able to get through all of them, but somebody said, can I get advice on post-binge guilt? And honestly, my best advice is just get over it as quickly as you possibly can. Accept the fact that you did it, and the quicker you get over that and you stop wallowing and throwing shame on yourself and feeling guilty, the quicker you can just get back to what you were doing before. And I really do think that the quicker that you pick yourself up, the less times you end up falling down, because you just like, you get up and you become resilient and you work on the things that you need to work on. But sometimes we just like focus so much on the thing that we did wrong, and like that in itself is keeping us stuck. If you were to just like get over the fact that you ate those cookies, you'd be better off. But like you just won't stop being so obsessed with the fact that like I'm wrong for eating those cookies, which then push you into the binge even more, versus if you just, okay, I did the thing, why did I do it, whatever, you explore that and you get back onto it, you don't go into the binge even more. Like you don't eat more because you're over that and you've moved on. And we really got to release that perfectionist part like a little bit more, that grip. Someone said, I need advice on binging at night, over snacking at night, satisfying a sweet tooth. Like I read in that little quote, sometimes you genuinely just could be undernourished. So I would take a look at the types of meals that you're having. A lot of the times when we are restricting, of course, we're gonna want more. We're gonna want the sugar. We're gonna crave more food because you're literally starving yourself. And you might not actually be starving yourself in the sense of maybe you're eating, but maybe you're not eating calorie dense foods and meals like whole foods, things like that. So taking a look at your foods, are they balanced? Are you eating fat and protein and carbs, fiber, those really rich nutrient dense meals that will keep you satisfied and keep you satiated, and it will not push you so much into these cravings? Doesn't mean that you will never have sugar cravings, and I don't think that that's what we need to even strive for, because again, that's just coming back to these rules. Like just, it's okay that you crave sugar sometimes, but yeah, I think it's more so like the imbalances when you're wanting to do those binging situations. If you've kind of addressed other things like your emotional reasons why you'd be doing those things. Someone said tips on eating regular meals 3 times a day. I think for one, if you really struggle with eating like 3 consistent meals, maybe have the goal of just like, I'm gonna try and do my best this week, or like, you know, this is your goal, like during the weeks, maybe not even every week, but maybe a few times a week, to have a balanced breakfast. Like let's start there before we do, I need to have 3 balanced meals every single day forever, if you literally don't at all. I'm just saying that in terms of just setting like realistic goals. But I would say to plan, and you don't have to over plan, but it's just to have an idea of like, oh, I'm gonna have a breakfast that I actually enjoy. Make sure that you make breakfasts that you enjoy. And you know, tomorrow I'm gonna have that. You have all the things that you need to make that breakfast, and you're gonna create some time and space in your day to have that. Or maybe you're gonna meal prep just your lunch for a few days out of the week. Like don't go too hard too fast, because again, it will feel overwhelming and you might not enjoy it. Now, someone has expressed that they struggle with eating for pleasure and boredom. They said, no replacement ideas hit the same, and I can't pretend food doesn't make me happy and that I should mostly eat for health. Then don't. Like this is, it's crazy that we, even when we're healing, and like no shade, I'm not like trying to be like rude or anything. I'm just being like, literally like, don't, it's okay. We go back into that perfectionist mindset or those rules again. You're gonna want food sometimes just for pleasure. And you're not always going to have those food replacements hit the same as like a chocolate bar would. And that's okay. And like, we don't need to gaslight ourselves in thinking that, because I think that that is like half the problem. Because I have been there. I have been in the dieting realm where it's like, okay, let me just find all the replacements for all my favorite foods. And that is honestly, guys, like, you can make some replacements for things, but then sometimes it's like, just eat the ice cream or just have the cookie instead of making everything like high protein and this, that. So I think that honestly, removing that pressure to like not be like that will help you a lot more than I think anything else. And accepting the fact that there's gonna be times that food will be for pleasure and food will be for health, and that is okay. Someone said, still having sugar cravings sometimes and cravings during menstruation. Again, we are striving for perfection if we are just trying to get rid of sugar cravings all the time. Like, I think that that will just end up consuming your mind. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't have the goal to like maybe like lower sugar, like I don't know, like where you're at, and that's okay. But I just think that we're just overwhelming ourselves, and there's like more important things that we can be doing in this world than to be like obsessing over the fact that like I still have some craving for sugar, especially around your menstrual phase. So again, it's kind of like letting yourself be imperfect, and maybe there's going to be some times where you have the sugar, but then also, yeah, maybe there'll be some times where you can have maybe some fruit bowls. You're finding other ways to eat more like more balanced foods. Like, I love a good yogurt bowl. It's high in protein. I'll add some berries and stuff in there for fiber, hemp seeds, some dark chocolate chips, and that hits the spot. And I personally believe that's a lot better than me just having a pint of ice cream, because it's really just all sugar, and that will spike my blood sugar and then I'll crash. And I actually feel a difference, but sometimes I'll have the ice cream as well. But also with your period, understand that like your hormones are hormoning, okay? So give yourself some grace, but also coming back to maybe your body's not necessarily the most nourished, especially around this time. So learning about cycle syncing can be very helpful, and understanding where your hormones are at and what your hormones need to be supported during this time, so you're not super into the cravings. I really make sure that I'm nourished during this time. I eat actually typically, and I don't count or anything, but I just know this because I understand what my hormones are doing, but also intuitively my appetite rises. So I typically will eat more food during that time. I will have lots of carbs and proteins. Like, I love steak and sweet potatoes, and I mean, there's so many other foods that I eat. I make sure to supplement with magnesium, which can definitely help when it comes to craving things like sweets during that time. But again, that video will be coming. And another person said, I eat chocolate when I'm bored and watch TV. Again, like, you have to see, like, is this a binge thing or maybe even just like an overeating thing? Because there's definitely a difference. Like, overeating is genuinely like, maybe like I am at a restaurant with my boyfriend and we kind of ate like a little too much because things tasted so good, but it wasn't like a binge. Like, I wasn't like consumed about it. I didn't think like, oh my god, I shouldn't eat it. Like, I just feel like a little bit like I overate, and maybe I should have like slowed down when I'm eating, things like that. And that can be true kind of like when you're bored and you have nothing to do. It's like, well, maybe I can like eat stuff. But I would say that it still might be this like crash out at the end of the night, whether it's not eating balanced meals and or the emotional thing as well. If you are kind of like consumed by it and you're just eating a lot of chocolate at the end of the night. So it's to see, okay, well, is there also other things that I could eat if I am going to be bored? And I'm only saying that because for me, if I eat a lot of chocolate, sometimes it just doesn't make me feel good. So if I'm going to eat, if I'm bored, then can I eat something that's going to fill me up a little bit more? And I, even when I am bored, don't go to food a lot. So this is why I'm saying maybe it still has that underlying like emotional pull or the regulating your nervous system pull. But honestly, guys, sometimes we're just bored and we don't have things to do and we need to do more things. And I don't mean this in the sense of like be super overproductive and stress yourself out and burn yourself out. But I think that sometimes like you make not the best decisions when you are not having things to do in your life. So I don't know how bored you are or how much you watch TV. If it's like every single night all the time, like, can we change up our routine a little bit? Can we do a little bit of self-care? Can we eat maybe something that's a little bit different than the chocolate every single time? Can we be more creative with our food? Can we go on a walk or change our lifestyles like a little bit? And I think starting with any of those things will help you move yourself and shift out of that cycle a little more, which is all you need. You don't need this radical change. You don't need this like full-blown like rebrand life. I promise you, it's not how you're gonna get out of these things. It's gonna be those little baby steps. It's gonna be, you know what, last week I did a little bit of a binge, but you know what, I picked myself up like literally the next morning, instead of waiting till Monday and then eating throughout the entire weekend. Or, you know, I went out with my friends and I had those thoughts about, oh, I shouldn't eat this and that, but you know what? I really tried to enjoy my pizza for as much as I could. I ate my pizza and I did my best to focus on other things. And then the next day I just kept going. I did whatever I was doing with my health and my wellness. Like, those things are going to be the things that will get you more resilient, and your mind will go from being in the obsession to being more in that healthy version of you. And slowly you will see that these thoughts and patterns don't come up because they don't serve you anymore, because you are becoming resilient and you know where these habits lead you, and also you're showing up for yourself emotionally. You are dealing with your traumas, you're dealing with your triggers, you're changing your lifestyle, you are fueling yourself in a way that your body's like not desperately needing or wanting things that might not serve you, but for the moment it will spike your blood sugar or give you that dopamine kick. All of those things will bring you to a healthier, happier life. But I do really think you need to drop this idea that anything needs to be perfect, because you don't need to be perfect to be healthy and to have a healthy life and to even get out of this type of cycle. So I know I said a lot, and there's probably so many more things that I can dive deeper in. I hope this video helped. Please let me know if it did in the comments. Let me know what you want me to expand on. There's many things that I can talk about and show you guys even. But yeah, that'll be it, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.